Check, check, check. Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Excellent.
Might want to make sure you're coming through on OBS too.
Yeah.
You'd love it.
And here we are too. Oh my God. This stuff is so hard. YouTube doesn't show me I'm live until 30 seconds later, and it's like, you're live, you've been live while you were blowing your nose and while you were swapping into your cameras. Welcome, connoisseurs of fine common cardboard, to today's live stream and to this blue set review for Commander Masters CMM with my good friend Puzzlebox and a member of our moderation team for the Common Connoisseurs. How you doing today, buddy?
We're not too shabby.
Excellent, excellent. So you stoked for this set?
Oh yeah, there's some pretty good stuff.
Yeah. I know you all did your set review, so I'm very interested to see how our thoughts come together on this with Blue, and see what you thought was good, what I think is good, maybe a little bit of what you and chat think is good. So thank you everybody who showed up on this fine day. I know it's quite sunny outside for me here, and maybe it is for you too. So I do appreciate you all joining us today, and I hope you learn a little bit of something new about this incredibly powerful new set. For those of you who don't know, I was at a festival this last weekend, and I got basically turned on my phone on, I think it was like Friday, and I had this flood of direct messages from people saying, look at the crazy stuff they downshifted. The Gutter Snipe, the Dread Return, Teshar, Generous Gift, Sailor's Bane, or not Sailor's Bane, but Cryptic Serpent, all of these cards, and we're going to talk about some of the blue ones here. And I was like feverishly like typing away on my phone and making little Twitter posts and stuff. So eager to see what you all think here. Let's get right into it here. The first card that we're going to talk about here is Cryptic Serpent, and I got a chance to play Sailor's Bane today with Cryptic Serpent in it, and it felt really, really good to have a Sailor's Bane, a Tolarian Terror, a Cryptic Serpent, and a Murmuring Mystic in play while I was tempoing people with the Sailor's Bane. So I'm pretty excited about this card, and it's funny because Sailor's Bane has essentially absorbed two cards that were previously played in the command zone. So Murmuring Mystic used to be a commander that I played a lot of. Third Path Iconoclast came around, and it was a pretty clear swap for me. The one thing you got kind of three things with Murmuring Mystic over Third Path Iconoclast, and that was flyers, which is a big deal. You get a 1/5, which doesn't die to very much, and you got flyer synergies with like birds and flying things like Airborne Aid and what was the winged words, and then what's the counterspell that's like a Mana Leak plus?
Lofty Denial.
Lofty Denial. Yep. And then you got Airborne Aid for the bird synergy. And then I think you also get like Kevorkin Mist, which is an illusion synergy thing where you basically can produce like a huge flying illusion creature. So that was all cool, but ultimately TPI took the cake because it's just the pingers are so good. You get Curiosity combo. Clay has been practicing with Banishing Nat combo. You can even do Drake combo if you wanted. And it's just a really dynamic deck. You can build it aggressive, reactive, proactive, defensive, control. And now we got Murmuring Mystic. And of course, Sailor's Bane used to be Cryptic Serpent. There was a Cryptic Serpent deck that was in the cPDH DDB for a time that was created by Cowards Can't Block Warriors. And I can't remember their exact name right now because my brain is a little smooth and mushy. But now we have Cryptic Serpent in our 99. So, Puzzle, what do you think about this card? Are there any homes for it that aren't shown here on screen? Any other places you might think it's good?
I think this card is fine. An interesting thing for me about this card is like if we look at a card like Gurmag Angler, it's a card that people used to play a lot, and it's kind of fallen out of favor. Like,
are you saying in cPDH or?
Yeah, in cPDH.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a card that people don't play much anymore.
Why do you think that is?
I think part of that is just more tournaments happening, timed environments. It's really a slow win condition, and it's just a vanilla. And this is also just a vanilla.
Right.
So it does struggle there.
It's like an efficient threat, but it does take some workaround. I mean, that's one of the things I see here in terms of why it might not find a home. I found myself cutting Gurmag Angler from a lot of decks because whenever I drew it early, it was very dead in hand. It felt like a 7 mana 5/5, right? And
Yep.
so Gurmag Angler, I think, takes a build around in the same way that Cryptic Serpent does, but people didn't see it that way. They saw it as like, you just play Gurmag Angler because it's a good black card. But I think the lesson here is that Cryptic Serpent, Gurmag Angler, Tolarian Terror, they really need a special home, right? They need a home where you can actively fill your yard, where you don't care about what's in your yard. And increasingly, I found myself using my yard and not wanting to exile things from it, right? I don't want to exile those creatures that I cycled away. Like in black, I'm building a lot of decks with like Horror of the Broken Lands, Injector Crocodile, Gloomfang Mauler, Street Wraith, Troll of Khazad-dûm, and I don't really want to eat those creatures up, and I'm cycling them in early, so they're not really fodder for the Gurmag Angler because I want to bring them back with Reaping the Graves, Blood Fountain, Death Denied, something like that. And so it's kind of an awkward thing, right? Like Gurmag Angler suffers from the same problem. You need to be able to fill your yard with stuff that you actively don't care about. And increasingly, I think decks actually care about their own yards quite a bit, even if it's not for combo purposes. Like I don't even see Relic of Progenitus seeing a ton of play right now because people want to use their own yards and they don't want to sacrifice their yard for that. So see more of like the Honored Heirlooms and things like that. So Cryptic Serpent has a couple of homes, but they're niche. They're specific.
Yeah, notably, I don't even think this card sees play in TPI. I think
thought
it's
about
fine
it. Yeah.
in Sailor's Bane and Crackling Drake, maybe, just because that's already what you're trying to do, and your commander is already a beat stick, so having another big beat stick is relevant. But with TPI, your entire board is small, and you're kind of winning with passive damage anyways. So if you have one big beat stick, it just gets chump blocked for eternity.
Yeah, it could
and
be.
no one cares.
I think Third Path Iconoclast, I'm not entirely sold that it wants to be in the deck because unlike Gearseeker Serpent, which is really synergizing with all of the rocks that are created and all the tokens, the Cryptic Serpent is only working with the instants and sorceries. The thing about Cryptic Serpent that I am interested in is that I've been thinking about TPI in a build of the deck that basically doesn't use the Curiosity combo anymore. And the reason that I'm looking at that is because basically the Curiosity combo invites more hate onto my pingers in a way that requires me to do a lot of things and wait a lot of time to actually draw those cards. So the ceiling on it is really high, right? There's this potential to draw like 15 cards, but the deck is going to discard to hand size anyways. So there's a part of me that's looking at like the new draw spell that we got for TPI, the Improvise card, and Cryptic Serpent, Mirror Enforcer, Sojourner's Companion, Gearseeker Serpent type stuff, and saying maybe this just wants to be, a deck that plays more generic draw spells, plays some generic beaters, and then it can sit behind the 1/1s as a wall while it attacks in with these other creatures. So Cryptic Serpent may see a home there, but if it's in your opening hand, it's going to be a very dead card for a while, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and sometimes that's okay. I mean, there's a lot of cards that suck in your opening hand out there, and we still play them sometimes. And luckily, your opening hand is only 10 cards, or is really only 8 cards. So, the likelihood of any card being in the top 10 is not that high. So maybe there's something to be said for it. But Crackling Drake and Sailor's Bane, notably, are really going to be mainly playing this as a blocker. This is going to be a hard to get through blocker. It could be an attacker in some cases, but this is basically a cheap way to put down something that's hard to get through while the Sailor's Bane gets to work, or while you control the board with Crackling Drake. And then I pointed out Levon, which also is a Spellslinger deck, and it seems like a home that it might find. We already play Tolarian Terror. This is just one more mana, slightly bigger, doesn't have Ward. But yeah, I think generally it's a fine card. There seems to be some good homes for it, like your Sailor's Bane kind of decks, but maybe a bit narrow. Do you think that's about right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Sweet. I mean, it is big. It's still a 6/5, so there is that. Moving on to the next one here, if my computer will allow. There we go. Let's see. Did we skip a couple of them here? We
Yep, you
did.
skipped the
There we
attendant.
go. It's not showing me because my computer is a potato. But we have Filigree Attendant. Um, this one wasn't really on my radar as something that I would have expected to get a downshift, but in retrospect, it seems perfectly fine. It dies to bolt. It is 4 mana. It is an artifact creature, which has some usefulness to it, so it's always going to have at least 1 power. What do you think of the card?
I mean, it's another. It's crazy to me how many blue commons we got this set that are just beat sticks.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's but
kind of
why?
aggressive, but why? Right?
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
cool. It's okay in TPI, I guess, since you're making so many artifacts. And
probably better than Cryptic Serpent, right?
yeah,
Because it
definitely
flies.
better than Cryptic Serpent. Um, and I guess the Cephalopod Sentry plays it just because it's redundancy. But
Yep, it's
like,
another copy of it, basically.
notably, 3 out of the 4 decks that are shown here hardly see any play.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, I just don't see this card showing up in the meta very much at all.
for sure. We have to keep in mind that we don't really have enough players to saturate the meta with the number of decks that are probably good. And so while like particularly Sphinx Summoner, I used to play against this all the time. And this deck has gotten a ton of cards in the last like 7 sets, even. And it just hasn't had a pilot who's picked it up because we really don't have enough people playing cPDH to really get that coverage. But I think you're right that like of all of these, like Third Path is probably the one that's most likely to play it, and it probably plays over Cryptic Serpent. The flying part of it is definitely a big deal, and you could see a home. I mean, it's not hard to imagining this card being like 13 power, like or 10 power or something, and just being huge.
Yeah.
And if it eats removal and one of my pingers doesn't, then okay, I think that's quite fine. And we're blue, so we can protect it. So I'm bullish on this primarily in Third Path Iconoclast. I think in Esior and Armix, I like the idea of having a threat built into the deck that can benefit from what Armix is doing and what we've got going on here with loading the board up with artifacts. And then Cephalopod Sentry, not seeing any current play right now. I think One More Games MTG has played a bit of this after we constructed it. Although I think it was far from optimized. And so yeah, just like a second copy of your commander that you just happen to have in your 99, not so bad. But again, narrow, right? Are there any other homes like very heavy artifact decks? Maybe like Aethersworn Sphinx. That would be another really good home for it,
Yeah,
right?
the Sphinx, it's okay, but that's usually a combo deck, I believe.
It
So
is.
like, don't really want it taking up a slot
Mm-hmm,
there,
mm-hmm.
probably.
Like they'd probably
Um,
rather take the new Archaeomancer, right, for a slot.
yeah, if you're playing Affinity Emoti, maybe,
Right.
but like,
Okay.
even then,
What
yeah,
other
I
what
don't
other
know.
like artifact centric blue decks do we have that would want this? Is there any others?
Um, I
Not coming to mind.
guess Padim
Padim?
from this
Yeah,
set.
could be Padim.
Like, a lot of these cards are like, you know what? If Padim is good,
Then
maybe.
maybe.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah. Right on. Right on. I do want to mention too to those viewing before we get too much further that if you haven't checked it out so far, you should go check out Puzzlebox's YouTube channel. He also has a collaboration with Gatorbait with his channel, with his podcast, The Common Theory. And I can write this here in chat for y'all. Common Theory.
yeah, we were very brutal on cards in our review.
That's what I
Because
heard. That's what I heard.
we were looking at things from strictly like
Like,
tournament. What
yeah.
is seeing played? This is good or not
Yeah.
gonna see play in those decks.
And what
Yeah,
we're doing here a lot of times with the set reviews is we're thinking about what's possible, because what I often find is that like I'm no oracle on this stuff, and so there's no way for me to predict really exactly all of the homes that something might find play in, because things change all the time, right? We get a new commander, so basically we could look at Filigree and say like if we get another commander that really cares about having like artifacts and maybe big flying beaters or something of that nature, that this card could be really excellent in there. But I think it is worth mentioning that Sphinx Summoner, the ability to tutor up this card is basically this card has cranial plating on it. Like this card is cranial plating on a body, and being able to tutor that up is pretty phenomenal in a deck that packs a lot of counter spells. So any deck that's going to be able to protect this, like Aethersworn Sphinx doesn't really play a lot of counter spells, so it's actually not a great home for it. But it's a possibility. So we're kind of looking at what's possible as well as like what is probable. Like probably a third path iconoclast card, right? It's going to be very good there. So yeah, let's move on to the next one here. Let's see if it wants to change in a timely manner on me here. Nope, it's going to be super, super slow because my life is pain. Okay, back. So yeah, we're going to go to Murmuring Mystic. This is the next one we've got here. Hashtag Bird Gang. I've been playing I've played hundreds of games of Murmuring Mystic. I love and adore this commander. TPI came out. Obviously, it was a pretty direct replacement. It's half the cost. I used to have people joke and they'd be like, Ryan, what would you do if Murmuring Mystic got red or black? And it was like, don't give me dark thoughts, dude. Like that would be so sick. And then they just like printed TPI, and it's like a lot more than that. Like,
yeah,
it's tribal synergies, it's artifacts, it's non-creature, it's half the cost, it's in red. Like, it's a lot. There's a lot going on here. But I think it made it perfect timing to take Murmuring Mystic and say, this is a card for the 99. And I think that the implications of this card, particularly for blue decks, are somewhat significant depending on what they're doing. Murmuring Mystic is an infinite mana payoff for a kill on the next turn. If you just cast, Ghostly Flicker, Peregrine Drake, you don't need to draw your deck. You don't need to mill everybody out. You just make infinite birds, is one option. But I think it's actually, its home is really good in like Crackling Drake and in Sailor's Bane, because you're able to make blockers. And this is something that decks have always struggled with. Crackling Drake, one of the problems it's had is just dying on the ground to stuff. So we have to play cards like Hard Evidence or Kraben Inspector, as it's sometimes called, an Academy Wall and Mnemotic Wall and things like that. But I think it gives it some defensive capabilities. Also, as a backup plan, having a flock of birds can end the game really quickly. Every time I've played Murmuring Mystic, if I'm ever turning the corner, it's like 2 turns and the game is over. You just make a lot of birds. So what do you think about Sailor's Bane? What are your thoughts on this card? Or sorry, on Murmuring Mystic, pardon me.
I honestly don't know how to feel about this card. Like, obviously the text is very powerful. Being at 4 mana is a little rough. There are a couple decks where I think it sees play, like one that's not listed here. I think Balmor Battle Mage is like probably potentially one of the better decks for this, because Balmor pumps your entire board and this builds a board. But I don't know. I think in a lot of decks like TPI, I think this is more of just a win more card, because you have to spend 4 mana to put it into play, and then it just does the same thing your commander does. Mm-hmm. Especially if you are on the pinger plan. I just think it's kind of probably win more. But I don't know.
One of the things I found with TPI is that you can find yourself in board stalls where you're not able to effectively attack because your opponent has filled the board with stuff. And we can still do damage because our pingers are essentially unblockable, right? And so it's possible that, where the deck wants to be is in just, focusing on playing every pinger possible. But what I do like about the Murmuring Mystic is it's giving us a way to produce attackers that can just chip away during a board stall. And that doesn't happen a ton, but it also survives sweepers, so that's pretty nice. TPI does not. TPI just eats it when you get hit by a Drown in Sorrow, a Fire Cannonade, Breath Weapon, unless you have a counterspell. So there is some appeal to Murmuring Mystic. It is expensive, but the deck does play 9 mana rocks and 34 lands. So it's not unreasonable that we'd cast this and still be able to hold up interaction. But it is kind of doing the same thing that the commander does, but worse. So there is that question. One of the other reasons I think that the Murmuring Mystic might find a home in TPI is that I have had issues in the past with dying to flyers. There's really no answer to flyers in that deck other than maybe the new Filigree Familiar and removal. And so if somebody looks at us wrong with their commander and they're doing flying stuff, maybe they give their Dargo flying, or maybe they have just anything like that, then our real only answer is counterspells and removal. So I think there's an element to that that's appealing to me. I don't know exactly what I'd cut to make room for this, though. That deck is pretty tight on slots. And I think I'd also have to look and see. We could probably pull it up here and see how many instants and sorceries there are in the deck to see whether that would really work. It's almost 40, so yeah, probably just fine. You know, I think the reason I like this more too than the Cryptic Serpent in the deck is that the Cryptic Serpent requires that you cast all these spells ahead of time. Murmuring Mystic says you can start casting spells after this and you're going to get benefits, right? It doesn't demand that you already have done something. So
yeah, it's definitely better than the Serpent.
right. I actually thought about Levon as another home for it, being able to give flying attackers that you make every turn big buffs with like Treasure Cruise or with Will of the Naga or like Magmatic Sinkhole, where you just have like, here's my 7/1 flyer that I created for free. That seems really good too. So that was one other place for it. Any other homes for it other than Balmore? Balmore did seem good too. I mean,
yeah, not that I can think of. I guess like maybe if you just want more evasive creatures in like Real Surreal or some blue initiative deck, but yeah, I don't know.
Real Surreal plays like 39 creatures or something like that. So there's really not a lot of instants and sorceries. So maybe, I don't know. It could be used defensively in basically any flicker deck potentially, which I think is worth considering. That's something I've always had trouble with in blue-based decks that want to like sit back is, you know, getting run over.
Maybe Scholar.
Yeah, maybe Scholar. Yeah, Scholar would be another good one. Oh, and then the other one is Nightveil Predator. Nightveil Predator is another deck where being able to like swap a Cranial Plating over onto a 1/1 flyer, or just have like good Edict fodder, or have lots of blockers, I think is also a possibility. And it ramps pretty decently with all the treasure makers, so that's a possibility. But again, this is a good card. It's a good downshift, but it's also like its homes are like maybe like definitely less than 10 decks, right?
Yeah. Once again, just at 4 mana, it's a little niche. And it looks crazy, but like, yeah.
Yeah, and the wild thing is like Murmuring Mystic was one of my highest win rate decks for a long time, but the meta has changed, right? And things have gotten faster. And like when I was playing this deck and getting a lot of success with it, there was not a lot of like on the ground combat stuff. Like I was the beatdown, so things have changed quite a bit. And this probably has some good homes in the 99. But yeah. It just shows how much things have changed in the last 2 years. So on to the next one, or just one last thought on this actually, is that Murmuring Mystic and like Gutter Snipe and a lot of these other cards that have been downshifted really sort of imply that other cards are coming along with them. Like when I look at Dread Return, I see Zombify, right? When I see Murmuring Mystic, I think Young Pyromancer. And Young Pyro seems like a perfectly reasonable card to have in the 99. It is half the cost, which is a big deal, but it's basically the same thing without flying. It dies to the same sweepers the bodies do, but it sort of implies to me that that's coming. Are there any other of these cards that produce tokens that you think might come along someday?
At uncommon, or even rare, I guess.
Or even rare, I suppose, right? I guess there's Talrand Sky Summoner.
Yeah, I did expect Talrand to
Me
get
too.
Down to
How is that still a rare? It's so funny.
And it was in this set too.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Like, I don't know.
So here's a question: if we ever got Talrand, it seems to me that there would be a reason to pick Talrand over TPI.
There's an argument there to be made. I'd still go with TPI personally because I do think
the extra color is huge,
crazy. Yeah, and the artifact synergy is
yeah
very strong. But Talrand would be, there is an argument to be made. Sure.
Yeah, the card that I really like in that one that you don't get to play in Murmuring Mystic, or that you don't get to play in TPI is Sunken City. Which I think would be very good in Talrand, because then you've got 3/3s in the air, and those don't die to sweepers. So pretty cool there. All right, on to the next one here. We've got Reverse Engineer. This is another card, I think, just in line with kind of what you were talking about before. A lot of these blue cards are like kind of niche. they're powerful in their respective homes, but they're not like widespread use. And you're even seeing some common cards, right? Like there's a lot of artifact related stuff here. So we're back to the Sphinx. The Sphinx will definitely play this card because it's already playing draw threes that are more mana. And I think that this card, if you cascade into it, you're happy. If you cast this using like any sort of incidental artifact, you're also happy with it. So yeah, Sphinx Summoner produces a lot. This is probably going to be like a draw, like a 2 or a 3 mana draw 3 in Sphinx Summoner. TPI, it's definitely a draw 2. Like this is easy 2 mana draw 3, right? Cephalopod Sentry probably ends up tapping equipment to make this happen, which is also good. But yeah, are there any other homes for this card? I mean, it's a great card to have at common, but not a wild number of homes for it.
Yeah, once again, it's just like we don't have a lot of artifact token decks or anything of that nature. We don't have a lot of Voltron equipment decks that are particularly powerful where you can just tap the equipment. Yeah, I think it's fine. But yeah.
Why does it feel like this set is like TPI dot set? Like
yeah, it's an artifact set for blue, so
yeah, so TPI is just like feasting hard.
And yeah, like blue does artifacts, so every time we get artifact downshifts, TPI is always going to be like, oh, cool. Guess I get to play that too if I want.
Yeah. So probably not a whole lot more to say about this one. I couldn't really think of any other homes for it. We draw cards.
We got Lorien revealed, and you would never play this over that unless you are in an artifact deck. So
yeah, I just added Lorien revealed to third path iconoclast by cutting Ash Barrens. So like
yeah, yep, fair enough.
Pretty easy. Now this next one, probably a lot higher impact. Where this is like the best Archaeomancer we've gotten since Archaeomancer. This card is going to see play in any Ghostly Flicker Peregrine Drake deck. I think we agreed on this before the show that it's likely that you're either going to play this in addition to Scrivener or you replace Scrivener with it, because Scrivener is limited to just instants, right? And this can get both.
Yeah, and it's bigger and it has prowess and all that stuff.
And the prowess, do you think that's all that useful? What do you think?
No. I think in the decks you're playing this in, you're trying to win with combo, not combat for the most part.
Yeah. Might help in like a blocking situation where you want to like keep your command, like keep it alive.
Maybe it's a backup, maybe useful keyword. But yeah, for the most part, this is just another piece for Flicker, a better piece for Flicker, and I would take a very strong gander to say that this will be the most played blue card in this set.
Yeah. I think that's easily. Yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable, because all these other ones we talked about, they're very niche, right? They have a specific home. It's either like spells matter or artifacts matter, and this is like, well, I mean, people even play these things for value. Yeah. Right? Just like get a spell back. It's like it's a body, it can block, it can attack. I do like that in that fair context, this card is actually an attacker, right? You could easily see this as like a 5/5. And none of the other Archaeomancers can say that.
Yeah, this is the best 5 mana one, unless you care about the 4 toughness on Mnemonic Wall.
Which is a big deal.
In that case, you're playing a defensive deck, which means you're probably playing all of them anyways. So yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. So here's some of the decks that we might see homes in. Tatiova, definitely going to play it. Abdel, for sure. I really like the idea of Crackling Drake as a Flicker deck as well. That's something that Gatorbaited worked on at a time. And I think that with the new sweepers we've gotten, some of the new good bodies that loot, we got the new Wizard Looter, as well as the Academy Wall, which we've had for a time now. But cards like that made a big difference in the survivability of Crackling Drake, because one of the problems it had is as a control deck, it didn't really have blockers. So you'd end up being forced to use your removal on things that weren't really like combo threats. They weren't going to kill you right away, but they were just chipping in free damage. And so it always felt frustrating playing Crackling Drake if somebody flooded the board, because they were just like taking cheap shots at you, and they're just like, yeah, like wipe the board, like what are you gonna do, and yeah, you might have to, but the increase of sweepers that we've gotten has helped a little bit, I think, too, and the ability to ghostly flicker combo with basically Archaeomancer effect, some sort of flicker, and Peregrine Drake means that Crackling Drake is your draw outlet. It's what's going to draw your deck. So that seems pretty simple to me. And the ability to like cast one of these things, get a sweeper back, and then use it again, or a removal spell, it's all very synergistic with the deck. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Flicker Drake is the variant that I've always argued for.
Yeah.
I don't like non-combo Drake decks personally.
The non-combo Drake, I think, made more sense in a time where not having the combo meant that you were allowed to get away with more stuff, and you could just play a harder control game. I think where we're at now, like, we've gotten a lot more sweepers, we've gotten better ways to control the board. I think I like it. I haven't switched mine over to a combo variant, but I think I will be. It's just a matter of time. So I also like that they're just bodies, like this meta, it's so helpful to just have bodies to soak up damage so you don't die. And this definitely accomplishes that. So, and then Sphinx is the other one. Sphinx plays dramatic reversal combo, but it also plays flicker combo. And so having cards like this is just great. And the prowess there could be more useful than in other decks where you're playing a lot of rocks, you're cascading into things. So yeah, I mean, you could see this being like 6-7, huge, which would be pretty funny to kill people with an Archaeomancer.
It would.
Yeah. Moving on from there, we've got Vizier of Tumbling Sands. And of course, you were the person we had to have on for this, because Vizier of Tumbling Sands is probably the clearest and best upgrade to Gretchen in a long time. Maybe right alongside like the new Blighted Burgeoning.
Yeah, we got a land untapper and a land enchantment a couple sets ago.
We did.
And both those just went in because more redundancy. I will not complain.
And the land untapper is 2 mana, right?
Yep, it was a 2 mana untapper, so it replaced it replaced Rimewind Taskmage.
Yeah.
And this Vizier just replaced Ley Druid. It's pretty much strictly better. The only downside is that this doesn't share a creature type with Gretchen, which matters for Path of Ancestry specifically.
Right, not a huge deal though.
Yeah, the upside is insane. 2 extra power, or toughness, so it doesn't die to sweepers. It can untap anything in case you need to untap something else for some reason
while drawing a card.
And yeah, the cycling ability is draw a card ritual if you have a land that taps for 3 or more with an untapper, which is very strong. This is just good in Gretchen. Maybe it sees play in Weavers. Yeah, I don't know how many extra untappers Weavers are on.
So here's a question. One of the first things when I saw this that came to mind was the utility of being able to cycle this at instant speed uncounterably. So this is a 2 mana twiddle that draws a card. And I'm curious to hear from you as somebody who is really experienced with that deck. How do you think that will play out? It's a ritual, right? So what kind of circumstance would you want to be using this and holding this in hand? Maybe you aren't able to deploy it. Maybe you draw it off of Gretchen. Where does that come in, do you think?
So the fact that it draws a card means that you can use it if you're like... A lot of times with Gretchen, you get targeted pretty early on, which means a lot of times you're going to have to be able to notice I'm dead next turn, and I have to go for it this turn.
Yep. And
I think this is great on those turns, just because it's a ritual that draws a card. It's everything you need it to be there. I've had games where I've cast Unwind and Rewind on my own stuff as rituals. So, this actually netting a card instead of losing a card to do that is very nice. It's uncounterable, which means if you need extra mana and you know you're going to need more mana that turn, the first thing you do that turn is just tap your land, cycle this, and just get that extra mana floating ahead of time so that they don't know what you need it for.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good ability for.
Do you have Reclaim in that deck too?
Yep.
Okay, so you could potentially have a turn where you went like Vizier of Tumbling Sands, cycle it, and then
You could
you
reclaim
could
it, but
reclaim it.
your land would have to tap for a lot of mana for that to be beneficial.
So if you were tapping for a lot of mana and you needed to produce a lot of mana, you could do that, or you could just reclaim it later on to increase the amount of mana. There's probably better things to be doing, but I'm just thinking it just seems like a very dynamic card. And the fact that you can like draw a card and untap something could potentially be very potent.
Yeah, being able to have this as just the ritual later in the game, whenever you already have untappers established, is nice, because sometimes you just draw 3 land untappers and no auras, and it feels awful.
Yeah.
So this being able to draw a card at bare minimum for 1 mana, assuming you untap just a land with no auras, is not bad.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning too, this is just an untapper. It's just another one. So I mean, I think like that being the floor is perfectly reasonable and perfectly fine. I also like that this card doesn't require anything of your permanent. It's not like a forest, it's not a snow permanent, it's not anything like that. It's just any permanent, just untap target permanent. So yeah, definitely spicy. Cool. Well, moving on from there, we've got the next one, Wind Rider Wizard. I put this next to Academy Wall because it's basically the same thing. There's a few subtle differences. Academy Wall is a much better blocker, and Academy Wall can only trigger once per turn. The Wind Rider Wizard is a flyer. It can attack, and it's not barred from drawing more than 1 card per turn. And I've had this in play on turn 3 in Sailor's Bane, and good God, it was so sick. First of all, it was like guaranteed that if I wasn't before, I was definitely going to be doing a turn 4 Sailor's Bane. Turn 3 is usually the target, but it was guaranteeing a turn 4. And then when it sat in play all that time, it just meant that like I never had bad draws anymore, right? Like I just take cards that I didn't want and I loot them away. Pretty spicy. You think there are some homes for this card as well?
Yeah, I'm sure this card will see play. Academy Wall sees play.
Yep. In like a lot of blue decks, right?
Yeah, notably, it is Academy's Wall's 5 toughness is very relevant, especially in the decks that it tends to see play in.
As a defensive element, right?
It is, yeah. So it is annoying that this doesn't block very well and dies to sweepers. But yeah, the upside on this card is insane. So
yeah,
I still think this is good. I don't know if it directly replaces Academy Wall, especially in decks like Scholar of the Ages, where they really need those additional blockers to help them out. But it probably gets played in addition to it.
Yeah,
in a decent number of decks.
Here's another thought too. Archaeomancer Snap combo. You actually do cast the Archaeomancer, and so this is a cast trigger, and it does say Wizard. So this does actually give us a way to loot through our deck. With just
it also
those there.
loots on the snap anyways. So
oh, that's a good point. Yeah, so it's kind of pointless in that case. It's just giving you more loots, and that doesn't really matter if you're going infinite, right? Yeah. So it's really about the cast of the instant and sorcery. Yeah. So the wizard part might be relevant. I don't know, like Adelise, I guess, if that ever were to do a thing. I haven't found that deck to be super compelling, but
yeah, I think it's more just like my deck happens to play a couple wizards. Like the fact that it does trigger off of Archaeomancer means that occasionally it will loot off of the Archaeomancer. But
which is kind of nice. It's not bad, especially since the Archaeomancer can get those things back and all that. So yeah, but I think this one definitely going to see quite a bit of play, just like Academy Wall. And yeah, pretty spicy. So next one, Goliath Sphinx. This thing is just big, dumb, flies.
Bad card.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't really know what to say about this card, like where it's going to go, like what usefulness it has. It's not even great as a reanimation target, really, because it's not like in 60 card, it's not two-shotting you. In 60 just card, it doesn't have any protection.
Ulamog's Crusher.
Yeah, right.
Don't reanimate this.
Don't cast this. I mean, it's probably a fun casual card. It is huge, but it's also hugely expensive. So I mean, so 7 mana. So does this? You can cascade with this into Aethersworn Sphinx, right? Because it's 9.
Yeah.
So you can.
You could.
And I think there's
you can play it in Emoti, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, this
So Emoti and Sphinx,
is not gonna
and
see
that it.
play in competitive.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
my yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think we're on in agreement there. Renowned Weaponsmith, another card that we're not very bullish on, unless there's something else that's come to mind in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. I think if Padim is able to consistently combo somehow, then this will be good in Padim.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, I guess if you're playing Affinity Emoti and find a way to make that truly competitive, then maybe.
It's funny because Heartpurser, Bow, and Vial of Dragonfar are not highly important cards.
Yeah, no, I thought this card might be okay, because at first I thought Heartpiercer Bow could hit face, so I thought that this would give some redundancy maybe to Viridian Longbow decks.
Right.
But Heartpiercer Bow cannot target players.
It cannot.
So yeah, this is rough. I assume that's Clay in chat. Hello.
That is Clay. Yes, welcome, Clay. Yeah, today we're doing an earlier one, mainly because your boy here needs to sleep. I had a great sleep last night. I slept 9 hours. I closed the blinds, went completely dark, ate 2 melatonin, Benadryl, a bunch of CBD, some ibuprofen because my body hurts, and I went lights out, and it was great. And I'm going to do it again tonight, and I'm going to do it again after that, and I'm going to do it again after that until my body feels recovered from this meat grinder I've been on. So anyway, Renowned Weaponsmith, not very good. Yeah, not a good card. Clay says, "This cooled. I'm deconstructing cEDH decks while I watch." What a connoisseur of common cardboard here we have. We've taking his cEDH decks and turning them into more PDH decks. Now on to our commanders. We have kahoe, minamo, historian. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's tutoring up your combo cards, I guess.
I mean,
you can tutor up Ghostly Flicker and Displace, and Whisper the Muse.
Cool until you realize that if you flicker it, it loses track of the cards that
no
it
way.
exiled, and you cannot cast them again. Otherwise, I think this card would actually be competitive, maybe. But yeah, no. If you tutor up a flicker and 2 other cards, and then use the flicker on this card, those other 2 cards are just gone.
What happens if it dies?
Attached. Same thing. It's
no
attached
way.
to that instance of.
Cool.
Card.
All right, moving on. That card is trash. We've got Padim console. Okay, when I was looking at it before, I thought, well, if this card, can hold on to that tracking, then you're just accumulating cards that are your combo cards, right? You accumulate your Ghostly Flicker, your Displace, your Whispers of the Muse, whatever you need to win, right? Anyways, Padim, Console of Innovation. Artifacts have hexproof. 4 mana, 1/4 at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control an artifact with the highest mana value or tied for it, draw a card. So kind of like you have Monarch built into the command zone and your stuff. But again, Padim just basically becomes like a standard bearer, right? It has to die before they can target your other stuff.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I do think the repeated card draw is good, and the protection on artifact combos is cool. The problem is that our artifact combo takes 4 cards. But so does Flicker, technically.
Yeah, it does. They're equivalent in that sense.
But there's much more redundancy in Flicker, and the cards are better in general.
Yeah, and, right. Ghostly Flicker and Displace are still just protection spells.
Yeah, and all the Archaeomancers are
and they're just value spells.
And Peregrine Drake is 0 mana.
And Banishing Knack does have the ability to be a removal spell, which I think is also worth mentioning. And the cards like Steelfin Whale, Mirror Enforcer, Sojourner's Companion, which are all ways to combo off with the Banishing Knack. Those are all decent cards as well, especially if you're giving them hexproof for the purpose of beating people down. But again, this is 4 mana. I feel like if this was 3, it would be a little more exciting. And it's drawing you an extra card, which is nice because you're probably going to have the most expensive artifact in play.
I guess if you want to play mono blue artifacts, maybe. But even then, we have what's it called?
The Sicarian Infiltrator.
Is it Tribute Mage that tutors the 3-drop artifacts?
Ooh,
because
I know what you're talking about.
I think that deck is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. You find Ashnod's Altar with it.
Yeah, it lets you find Ashnod's and the Foundry Inspector
and the Golem
and
Foundry.
the Workshop Assistant and the Golem Foundry. So it finds every piece but the Mirror Retriever itself.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, I mean, I'm not wildly impressed by this card. Probably don't need to talk about it too much more. I think if it were a little bit cheaper, it's fine. It depends. This is the kind of card where if we continue to accumulate a lot of like artifact payoffs in mono blue, then maybe we revisit it, right? Because the Filigree Familiar being like 10 power flying hexproof thing, you know, that's something. But yeah.
Come back when we get Mirror Battlesphere.
That's right, exactly. Portal Mage, no. I mean, it's I don't know. I don't know how much there is to actually say about this.
Once again, it's okay. So it's another flicker deck, except instead of having your double Archaeomancer in the command zone that you get with Scholar of the Ages, you get protection in combat, which is nice, but it does mean you have to find more pieces. So I don't think this is better than Scholar of the Ages.
Yeah, and we have Spire in chat. Welcome, my friend. Glad to have you here. Against Aethersworn Sphinx, you might not even have the highest CMC on board. Almost assuredly, you will not have the highest CMC on board with Sphinx.
Yeah.
However, and this isn't a reflection of Sphinx being a good or bad deck. I think it's actually quite strong. I've lost plenty of games to Sphinx, but it's not something that people play a ton of right now. I think that probably should change. I really like how Sphinx operates, where it's like a lot of redundancy. It digs really deep. It draws big. It defends itself well. It has a cast trigger in the command zone, and it punishes you for killing and interacting with their commander. So there's a lot to like there, but people just aren't really playing it right now. But you're totally right that if people were playing Sphinx a lot, Padim would definitely be sad. Like, it would not be drawing cards.
I think Sphinx struggles a bit in the meta just because it doesn't want to play counter spells, and combo is very strong right now.
Yep. Basically, Sphinx only wants to play counter spells that also draw cards, right? So, like, you know, you're really only looking for ones that have that modal nature, like Soul Read, or you find the Villain's Lair, things like that.
Or, you know, Arcane Denial, I guess.
Arcane Denial is a great one in that, yeah, for sure. Yeah, because you can always cast it and put something else on the stack and then draw a ton of cards. So that is an option, but yeah, it doesn't want to play counter spells, and that hurts it a little bit. So yeah, Portal Mage, not that great. I mean, you could just play the Ghostly Flicker, and then with this, you end up, you know, maybe getting to defend yourself. But there's, I think, other decks that do that as well. So we have Thrix the Sudden Storm. Now, I think we're maybe a little bit split on this. I'm not wildly bullish on this card. I do, however, see potential for a big blue style deck that deploys hexproof beaters uncounterably for cheaper, while playing mostly at your opponent's end step and casting like 5 and 6 mana draw spells with a big blue type strategy that are uncounterable and with instant speed. I think there's something to be said about that. It's also a 4/5 flash. It has evasion, but it wouldn't be the first mono blue deck that I'd reach for, right? I think I just reached for Sailor's Bane.
Yeah, I just don't think this is very good. I think if your deck is full of 5+ mana spells, the deck's just too slow.
Like too clunky, right?
And the payoff isn't that good for it. It's like, yeah, they
one
can't
less
be countered,
to cast,
which is like good, but
if it was like 2 less to cast, this would be a different story, I think, because 1 feels a little anemic.
We just don't have, so like the payoffs for Big Blue just aren't even that strong. Like, they're mostly just vanilla creatures or like an Ulamog's Crusher.
Well, actually, so hold on, I just realized something. Most of the Archaeomancers are 5 mana. So there is that. So you get to cast a 4 mana and Peregrine Drake. Wow. Okay, so hold on. This does make Peregrine Drake and Archaeomancer uncounterable. Except for Archaeomancer.
Not Archaeomancer, but yeah.
But you know what I mean. Yeah, so the Wall, the Scrivener, the Salvager of Secrets, the new one.
This is true.
That's actually, that's something.
Once again, we do have Scholar of the Ages if you want to play mono blue flicker, which I do think is probably still better than this. But yeah,
they're pretty different
interesting
decks, though,
at
right?
least.
I mean,
Are they? They're both blue flicker.
they're both blue flicker, right? But the Scholar of Ages is 7 mana, and
Yeah,
we actually have a lot of
but
Archaeomancers now, so we could always just play more Archaeomancers and instead of playing it in the command zone.
yeah, this does work with affinity, but if you're playing affinity, it's probably already 0.
Yeah.
So I don't think, and you're also doing what, making a uncounterable 4/4. Like
Right. That's not what we're
matter.
excited about. Yeah, no. I think uncounterable Archaeomancer, uncounterable Peregrine Drake, there could be other things as well. I think those strike me as more appealing. I'm going to reserve judgment on this one and see what the community comes up with on it, because I am curious about that element.
Having the outlet in the command zone for Flicker is
that's true.
Nice.
That's true, and you don't have that here.
That.
Yeah.
Scholar turns Flicker into a 2-card combo.
It does.
Which is just so good.
Yeah, it does. Clay is mentioning the same thing. Having the outlet in the CZ is big, though. The other thing I like about Thrix that I should mention as well, so like Spire just mentioned, Talarian Terror, the Cryptic Serpent, that kind of thing. But the other thing is that I really like that you can flash this in. I like that you can end step flash this in, and then next turn you've got your uncounterability and all that kind of wrapped up, which is pretty sweet. It's something where I would have to really sit down and look at what's above 5, like 5 and above, to see how appealing it is. But it's almost certainly like a big blue deck, right? We want to have a lot of mana in this deck, and we got to ramp really hard at the beginning. So we're talking like 15 to 18 rocks, 15 to 20 rocks.
That, or you are just playing mono blue Flicker and going, all right, my pieces are uncounterable, but not my ghostly Flicker, so please don't counter that.
Please don't counter that. Yeah, it almost doesn't matter as much that those are uncounterable. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is one I'm going to leave the community to figure out and see what they can do with it, because it does seem like it has some potential, but it also, like, there's analogous things that do that, right? So, and there's no payoff in the command zone. So, yeah, moving on from that one, we've got Tromo Cratus. This card seems awful.
That does exist.
Why is this?
Yeah.
Why? This card seems awful.
It's a 2-shot.
Yeah,
it has protection that lets you get other protection on it before they can interact with it, I guess. But yeah, no, this card not good. 7 mana,
dog shit. Yeah,
like you know what else is 7 mana, but not actually 7 mana?
Darko, or Sailor's Bane for like 1 less power for Ward 4 that you can attack with. Scholar of the Ages. I mean, it's so much mana for a creature that loses hexproof when you do anything with it, right? It does wipe the board if they want to block with it, but like in that case, you're probably losing it then, right?
I mean, not really. I mean,
I feel like it probably dies if somebody lines up all their blockers against it.
Depends on what you're playing against, right? Like,
you might be able to bounce
never
one.
Killing this thing, right?
That's true.
Like, I'm gonna try to bounce it whenever it's attacking, but my board's not killing it.
Yeah.
But Abdel eats this thing alive.
It does completely. Yep. Here's my 12 blockers. Yep. There we go.
TPI eats this thing alive.
Yep. It's not great. I don't love it.
And if it dies, you have to pay 9 mana for it.
Awful. So bad. Yeah. No, I do not like this card. Yeah, it's a shame, but here we are. Moving on. Zahid Jin of the Lamp. This one is kind of interesting, but it's 4 mana and an artifact, which is probably going to be a rock, if we're completely honest, right? So 5 mana for a 5/6 flying. It does skip the command tax, which does
not. You're
just
casting it. If it skipped the command tax, I think this would be maybe interesting, but you're still.
No, it doesn't. You're right. Yeah, you're still casting it. So no. So this card is still awful.
Yep.
I think we need better from our command zone than cards like this, right? I think we were
especially
talking about
in mono blue.
Yeah, right. Like the difference between a 3-shot and a 2-shot is really big. You have to add 3 power to this to give it a 2-shot, which is more than just a bone splitter, right? It's going to be a bone splitter and a short sword or something along those lines. So not likely that we're ever going to get this to the point where we could 2-shot somebody. And it doesn't have any built-in protection, doesn't give you any ETB value. It doesn't even skip the command tax. So, yep, evasion, cool, but like 4 mana 5/6 vanilla, basically, right?
So the value added in our format by another color is so high
Yeah.
that for a mono colored deck to be viable, your command zone has to be insane. That's
Yeah.
how I feel about monocolor decks
Yep.
in this format. So
Yep.
like Dargo Ketis, immediate win condition in the command zone. That deck's playable. Scholar of the Ages, combo piece in the command zone and crazy value piece, playable. This
No.
kind of a beat stick, but like we have Cryptic Serpent.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna pass on this one.
Yeah, I agree. I was a little bit more bullish on this. I wouldn't even say bullish. I was like hesitantly like maybe until you clarified the part about still needing to pay the command tax. And also when we were talking before, we talked about how much work it would take to get this to a 2-shot, and it's like, or you could just play Sailor's Bane.
Yep.
And cast it on turn 3 and have it be untargetable.
+1/+1 unblockable.
And kill somebody. 4. Right? Like, you know, and never pay the command tax. Like,
and
ever.
Have ward.
And have ward. Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's no comparison. So, yep, this is like a draft card, right? There's nothing else to it. And I think that brings us to our
that was
last
a rare.
2. And that was a rare. Isn't this funny? I think like you can really see the evidence of the power creep with cards like this, right? Like Murmuring Mystic is another good example. You know, I think even looking at like Generous Gift implies that we're going to get Beast Within, right? And other things like that. So the power creep is really showing, because even when we get to here, Melech is it Paragon? This used to be a rare too, right? So like a 2.
I think the text on this card really implies rare to me still. Like the text on this thing is insane. But yeah, it's 6 mana.
It's 6 mana.
Which is tough, but you know,
it doesn't give you ETB. It doesn't give you ETB value. Tatiova kind of gives you ETB value because you get priority to cast your spell, or sorry, to play a land. So you're going to get that trigger.
This gives you priority to cast your spell, but you have to have extra mana to do that.
And it's 1 more mana than Tatty.
So yeah, and you're not in green, so you're not doing land ramp. Although I'm sure you're playing plenty of ramp still.
Artifact ramp, yeah.
Notably, we've gotten a lot of ways to tutor Mystic Sanctuary, and this card is a 1-card combo with Mystic Sanctuary and Ghostly Flicker.
Oh yeah.
If you put Ghostly Flicker on top of your deck, you can cast it targeting your Mystic Sanctuary in a land,
and you go off really hard. Holy shit.
Of Ghostly Flicker and target 2 lands, and you get infinite mana just like that.
That's pretty cool. I mean, and we have a lot of ways to tutor for Mystic Sanctuary now. We have Shoreline Ranger, we have
Flicker,
and the Terror, and yeah, I mean, so that's actually kind of interesting. I think
this deck is something.
There's something here. Yeah, that was my impression when I first saw it. Is we have a way to copy spells. We have a way to dig through our deck by basically getting just one. We've got kind of like 8 cards in hand, right? We have like 1 more card in hand, and it's on top of our deck if it's an instant or a sorcery, which won't always be the case because we're gonna have to play a lot of mana rocks. And if there's mana rocks on top, then we can't really do anything with them. But it is it? So this can also defend itself. It's a 2/4, which means that we can be sweeping the board and not killing our own things, or at least not killing our commander. And it doesn't even require the Archaeomancer to do that. So while you might play Archaeomancers, like, you don't really need them because of what you just described.
And we also get to play like truly classic Izzet if you want to.
Izzet control.
If that's something you want, because you get to play all the cantrips.
Yep.
Because you're going to be playing like Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic as ways to shuffle your deck for free. Ash Barrens, so that means Brainstorm is now great. Rainstorm's insane
I
in
mean,
the first place,
Portent,
but
anything that can set up the top of your deck, right? Like
yeah,
Moment of
those
Truth.
are all good. So yeah, like
Was Moment
this
of Truth?
card's insane if it resolves and sticks
Yes.
for, like if it sticks for a turn, you're probably gonna win the game. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of the same thing as Tatiova in my eyes,
Right.
where it's just like
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah,
And
no,
to
it's
cast this and protect it is a lot of mana, right?
yeah.
The way I see this though is that maybe you're able to buy yourself time by playing Is It Control with a combo finish,
Yep,
because we have like the sulfurous. Is it sulfurous blast? Is that what it is?
yep.
Sulfurous blast. We have fiery cannonade. We have breath weapon. We have, because you're a spellslinger deck, you could just play swirling sandstorm. There's a lot of like, you could play rolling thunder. There's a bunch of stuff, and if you actually played Is It Control, then you're essentially like buying time by sweeping the board and whatnot to get the mana to be able to resolve this and start to do things. But again, we're looking at like a minimum of 7 mana to deploy this safely. If we're assuming that you need to play it and then have like either dispel, intervene, turn aside, shore up, you see a guard approach, Mizium Skin, dive down.
Red.
Yeah.
But yeah, you do still get to play High Tide.
That's pretty sick.
So there's that.
There's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it is a lot of mana.
Yeah.
That's definitely admitted. But it is a very strong color combination. Turning Mystic Sanctuary, a card that you're always playing in this kind of deck anyways, into a 1-card combo is strong. So there's something here at least.
Yeah. Dope. Cool. Well, I'm glad to have you on here for some insight around this, because I hadn't realized the combo there with Mystic Sanctuary.
I didn't figure it out until Bobby pointed it out to me.
That's really sick.
Hey,
credit to Bobby, Be Fine, from the Sanctuary PDH, and some of the great work he does with the tournaments, the leagues. If you don't know those, you should check them out. They've all been really fun. So, and there's actually some coming up, right? Do you know what the dates are on those?
Yeah, there's F&M tonight, I think, and then the tournament is the 12th, I want to say. So 2 or 3 weeks, I think. 12th or 13th, maybe, of next month. So
sweet. Good stuff. Well, let's move on to the last one here. We've got Tygam, Sidisi's Hand. This is probably the card I'm like least bullish on. I know you've got something you're working on here. I think that this card provides you decent card selection. It fuels its own removal, but it is Dimir control with a 5-mana commander that can't actually kill things unless it's untapping. And commanders that have repeat removal on them tend to struggle, because people look at it and they say everything important that I have is just going to die. And so they'll just counter it or kill it. And so I don't like it. I don't like it, but it does maybe seem to have some potential. It's a human wizard. There's some elements of that there. It is turning your draw step into something much better.
Yeah. So the thing about this card for me is that we got Dread Return. So I'm trying to brew a deck that's just Flicker Dread Return, just to see if it's something.
Flicker Dread Return.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the better ways to fuel that. I tried an Esper deck with Flicker Dread Return
with like
using the breakfast combo that we have access to.
Which one is that?
Let me look at the name of this card. We have one of the cephalids.
Nomad Ilkor?
Yeah, Nomad with whatever the cephalid we have is. Cephalid Aristocrat is just 5-mana Cephalid Illusionist, which is rough, but it's an infinite mill combo. Mm-hmm. And then the goal is you either have a Reanimate or a Flicker in hand, and you just go, okay, flashback my Dread Return, put the Peregrine Drake into play, and then reanimate my Archaeomancer, get the Flicker back to hand, go off. Or the other way around, get back the Archaeomancer, add the Flicker to hand, Flicker Archaeomancer, do that.
This sounds a little bit like Teshar, where it's like it's a thing you can do, and it's interesting.
Yeah,
but is it good?
You're still just playing Flicker, so you know it can't be that bad. But the Esper deck was not good when I tried it. It was very slow, and it was playing Nimble Larcenist in the command zone.
Right.
So I don't expect this to be great, but I want to try it just to make sure it's not good, because I've tried Teshar, and I think Teshar is pretty good. I think it was worth investing time into.
Oh yeah,
But
100%. I think worth putting time into. I've played against it twice now, I think, and in one of the games it kind of, because I was unable to find. Now it was weird that I wasn't able to find this because I was moving so rapidly through my deck. The fact that I didn't find a single unblock ability, and I've got I think 13 of them in the deck, was a little bit of weird variance because I'd already dug super deep. And it was able to lock me out of combat, right? I had a Cryptic Serpent, I had a Talarian Terror, I had a Sailor's Bane, and every turn I just ran into their stuff, and every turn they brought them back. And that did not feel good, for sure. But I am going to be watching to see if it's really doing something that is like effective because people don't know what the fuck it's doing, or whether it's like actually a combo deck that people would bring to a tournament.
Yeah. So the nice thing about Teshar specifically in this meta, I think, is that it's a combo deck that plays a lot of creatures that it wants in the yard, which means that it disincentivizes attacking.
Yep.
Because the hardest thing for Teshar to do is find the sack outlet. And if you are actively attacking me, you are giving me a free sack outlet for
Yep.
my value. And that is amazing. Not to mention you have Kami of False Hope
Yeah.
and the Oriok to reanimate.
That's a pretty cool piece of game
stuff.
theory there. Like, you know, part of what's important when we're looking at cards and decks is not to just look at the text on the card, but to think about how it plays in context with a pod. And so when we, you know, look at the Teshar, then I think what you talked about just there is really salient, right? It's like, well, this isn't just, you know, this isn't the way that that's working when you're putting cards into the graveyard for them. That's like helping them. It's kind of like Aethersworn Sphinx, where if you're killing Sphinx because you need to attack them, you're giving them more Sphinx triggers, right? Which is working them towards their combo. The other one that would do the same thing is like is Sphinx Summoner, where a lot of times you get like a cranial plating on it, and every time they kill it, you're just finding another combo piece, right? But you are threatening real damage. So yeah, definitely something to be said about that.
Teshar has obvious downsides. You know, it's a mono white combo deck for one. You don't have any tutors realistically for anything that's relevant, which sucks. It's 4 mana, very reliant on the commander and the graveyard to not have grave hate. But it's an insane value engine. It's got a million ways to combo. Does well against aggro. So you know, there's something there.
Yeah, let's pull up the deck here. Decks you like, and we'll do
Blue is done, everyone. We're doing Teshar now.
Yep, yeah, blue is done. That was the last one we're going to look at here. If you want to take a look at this deck here, the Teshar combo deck, Puzzle, you worked on this with a variety of different people. I'll drop this in the chat if you want to go take a look. There's a very thorough primer here explaining exactly all of the nutty ways that you can go in combo. So I feel like when you're playing this, you want to like have the primer up next to you so you can, you know, be like scanning this for lines.
Like, you can't write a primer for Teshar, I swear. Like, it's
too
got
many
so many lines, and every card is like a combo piece pretty much. And it's like, this is the basic layout of a combo. You figure it out.
Yep. It's going to take a wise Magic player's intuition to really understand, like, you know, and a very clear sense of what you're trying to draw into as well for your combo. It's not going to be as linear as like, I need to find Peregrine Drake or I need to find a Flicker, right? This is going to be like, I'm assembling a whole bunch of random shit together, and it's going to like do some stuff. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think this brings us to the end of this particular set review. When you think about all these cards in concert here, what do you think like the general theme of this particular set is?
I mean, for blue, it's definitely artifact heavy. And yeah, we just don't have like amazing blue artifact decks realistically, aside from TPI, which isn't really an artifact deck, but it makes a bunch of artifacts. So if we get some cool blue artifact decks in the future, maybe some of these cards will see play. But realistically, I don't think blue got that much out of this set other than an extra Archaeomancer, which is obviously huge.
Yep.
The wizard is nice redundancy,
Right.
and Melech is maybe good.
Yeah. So it's
Um,
kind of like there's a couple of big winners. It's like Gretchen is a winner, TPI is
oh
a
yeah,
winner.
and Gretchen
Um,
specifically.
any ghostly flicker deck is a winner, which is kind of funny. It's almost like blue. The downshifts in blue like made good decks better,
Yep, it
and
made a couple good decks better, and really, like, it downshifted cards for an archetype we don't have. But the problem is we don't have the archetype.
not
It's
yet.
not like
Yeah,
it's not like Dread Return, which can like potentially bring in a new archetype. It's just like
yeah.
decent cards for an archetype, but we don't have great
And
commanders
even
for it, and the
then,
cards aren't good enough to push for it.
Dread
So
Return like struck me mostly as just a very good fair card. Like you just have this card in your deck, and you can bring back a Gary with it. You can bring back like a Vicious Battle Rager, an Underdark Explorer, an Edict. Maybe do it twice during a game, but it's not like, it's not like making wildly new things
yeah,
possible.
I've been trying to find ways to break that card, and the best I've been able to find is just it makes flicker easier,
Yeah, yeah.
and the
If you're in
cephalid
blue or Esper
line.
Flicker, then you can get your Drake back. I mean, there's some stuff you can do for sure, like redundancy wise.
Yeah, but it's just like not that good. I really thought it would be better.
Yeah.
That's all
Well,
I have to say.
and I think like so the message here is that blue, the downshifts in blue, uh, largely went to an archetype that doesn't yet exist. It made existing meta decks better. So TPI, Gretchen, any flicker combo. And
And
I
we
think,
got a bunch of vanillas that are like,
yeah, and I think the one other thing I want to mention is that I do feel like it gave Spellslinger control decks some more defensive tools, and I like that. And I think that's good. More bodies that we can put in play that can just help us not die. I mean, Crackling Drake definitely got like 3 or 4 new cards. Um, Actually, I mean, it's more than that when you look at Red too. It got a lot. But yeah, so not broad impact though, right? Like very powerful set, some really busted cards, but like not broad impact, not broadly juicing the whole format with all this crazy stuff. It's not like Go for the Throat where it was like, oh, every black deck wants this card, you know?
yeah, at least not for blue
Yeah, not for
specifically.
blue. Yeah.
For some of the other colors,
A
we
little
got
bit
some good
more.
stuff.
Yeah, green not so
No,
much. White, you got your generous gift.
yeah, why just gets Teshar?
It
I
gets
I
Teshar.
just love Teshar generous gift,
There was a
and
bunch of other good stuff there too, but again, those were like pretty specific homes. Like black and red, I feel like, man,
yeah,
yeah, really, really good. Like black got some really sick shit. Like, I've been very stoked as a black mage, somebody who likes to play black in the command zone and a monocolored. It just, yeah, feels awesome. Spire asked, how do you guys think the blue decks will change for the new cards? I think we've answered that question
yeah.
through
That's
this.
right before we started going over
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So
totally,
good timing.
totally. Good timing. Yeah, so we kind of nailed it right on the head. So makes your blue decks, existing meta blue decks better, and gave blue control some more survivability, and set us up for artifact-based commander synergies in the future. And yeah, so that's a pretty good rundown of it. Yeah, I don't think we have a whole lot more to cover. It's been great having you on Puzzlebox. I really appreciate you jumping on. We don't have you on this nearly enough. It's just been like the hectic going through of stuff. You've been working on your project. We've been working on ours, and so I'm glad that we found a chance to get you in on this and have you talk about blue a little bit.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And folks, before you leave, we do want to encourage you, first of all, to like, subscribe, comment if you have any feedback for us. Also, make sure to go check out Common Theory as well as Puzzlebox on YouTube. I've left links there for that, and to go check out their content too. And make sure to check out Sanctuary PDH for their upcoming events here. They've got leagues as well as tournaments that Be Fine Bobby is going to be hosting here in the near future, and it's sure to be a blast. Also, for other cPDH stuff, if you're in the Philadelphia area, there's the Riches to Rags coming up, held by Dallas Walker. and the crew out there. So make sure to check that out. One final thing, I do want to give a quick shout out to our wonderful Patreons, the people who make this all possible. These folks have put their money where their mouth is to support content like this, independent content creators trying to bring more of this incredible format to you, both deepening our understanding of it and increasing the breadth of our knowledge of the format. And so if you too are interested in supporting the Common Connoisseurs, there are five different levels we have. We have a $2, $5, $10, $20, and $50 level. The $10 level here is a great place to start with member shoutouts, exclusive access to the Discord. You get these interfaces here that I've made custom that basically I'll add your name into it, and this will get you access to those interfaces forever. So even if you only did it for a month. We also get to vote on Let's Builds. The other thing at the $10 level is you get to participate in the conversations that we have with the Let's Build co-host a week in advance. So you're actually doing the Let's Build a week in advance and contributing to that before we actually go live, which is a really fun way to engage with the content. Yeah, so there you go. And Puzzle said, let's see, if we don't have time to answer, feel free to ask. Yep, there you go, for sure. Let us know if you have any other questions. We're happy to answer them. So yeah, check this out. It's patreon.com/common connoisseurs. And with that, I want to take a moment to thank all of our connoisseurs who make this possible and validate this project that Clay and I are engaged in. So we've got the PDH pod, Sanctuary PDH, Jack, Eric, Adkin, Jerry, Zach, Scooby, Chris, Mizu, William, Paul, Corey, Derek, Devin, Ian, Bobby, Jin Shooting Star, and Noyark. So thank you all for your contributions. It means the world to us that you're supporting us in that way. So thank you very much. And with that, I think it's time to wrap things up. Puzzlebox, once again, thank you for having us, for joining us today. And I appreciate all your contributions to the format through your incredible combo decks.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. Well, connoisseurs of fine common cardboard, it's been a pleasure having you all here. Hope to catch you all in the next live stream, and we'll definitely be catching you all on the battlefield. Have a great day and peace.